Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. For today's lecture, we will focus on Chapter 8, Producing a Workable Schedule. In the previous chapter, we learned about project scheduling, including how to arrange activities and understand task relationship. In this chapter, we will go one step further. We will not only learn how to create a schedule, but also how to make sure the schedule is realistic, practical, and workable. In real project management, a schedule may look good on paper, but it may not work well during implementations. For example, the project manager may prepare a beautiful Gantt chart, but if the resources are not available, or if one person is assigned to too many tasks at the same time, the schedule will fail. So this chapter helps us understand how to produce a schedule that can actually be followed by the project team. By the end of this chapter, students should be able to achieve several learning outcomes. First, you should be able to explain what makes a project schedule workable. This means you can identify whether a schedule is realistic or not. Second, you will learn how to perform basic schedule computations using a network diagram. These include calculating earliest start, earliest finish, latest start, and latest finish. Third, you should be able to identify the critical path and calculate float. These two concepts are very important because they help the project manager know which activities must be closely monitored. Fourth, you will learn how to use the project network to monitor and manage project progress. Finally, you should be able to assign resources to tasks realistically. This is important because a schedule will only work if the right resources are available at the right time. A workable schedule is a project schedule that is realistic and possible to follow. It is not only about putting tasks into a timeline. A workable schedule must consider the real situations of the project. For example, we need to consider the sequence of tasks. Some tasks must be completed before other tasks can begin. We also need to consider task durations, meaning how long each task will take. Besides that, we must consider resource availability. Even if the task can technically start tomorrow, it cannot be done if the responsible persons, equipment, or materials are not available. A workable schedule also considers possible delay, project risk, and team workload. So when we say a schedule is workable, it means the schedule can be implemented in real project conditions, not only planned nicely in the document. This slide reminds us one important message. A workable schedule is not just beautiful on paper. It must be practical during real project execution. Sometimes project manager prepare a schedule that looks very organized. The activities are listed clearly, the dates are arranged properly, and the chart looks professional. However, when the project starts, the team may realize that the schedule is too tight, resources are not enough, or some activities were planned without considering real constraints. For example, in a construction project, the schedule may state that electrical work can start immediately after wall constructions. But in reality, the materials may not have arrived yet, or the technicians may not be available. This shows that a schedule must be connected to the actual project environment. So, as future project managers, students must understand that a good schedule is not just by how nice it looks. It is judged by whether the project team can actually use it to complete the project successfully. This slide shows why a workable schedule is important. A good schedule helps the project manager prioritize task sequencing. This means the project team knows which tasks must be done first, which tasks can be done later, and which tasks can be done at the same time. A workable schedule also helps eliminate unnecessary delays. When tasks are properly arranged, the team does not waste time waiting for the unclear instructions or missing resources. Another benefit is resource optimizations. This means the project manager can use people, equipment, budget, and time properly. For example, instead of overloading one person, tasks can be distributed fairly among the team. A workable schedule also helps identify critical activities. These are the tasks that directly affect the project completions. When the project manager knows the critical activity, they can monitor them more closely. Finally, a workable schedule supports real-time progress monitoring and better decision making. When the schedule is clear, the project manager can quickly see whether the project is on track, behind schedule, or needs corrective actions. A project schedule is usually developed from the work breakdown structure or WBS. The WBS breaks down the whole project into smaller and more manageable parts. The process begins with the project scope. From the scope, we develop the WBS. Then the WBS is broken into work packages. After that, work packages are converted into activities. These activities are then arranged in sequence, followed by durations estimations. Finally, we can develop the project schedule. The key message here is very important. If the WBS is incomplete, the schedule will also be incomplete. For example, if the WBS does not include the activity prepare training materials, then this activity may also be missing from the schedule. As a result, the project team may forget to allocate time and resources for it. This can cause problem later. So before preparing the schedule, the project manager must make sure the WBS is clear, complete, and properly structured. This slide shows the difference between a work package and a project activity. A work package is a small part of the project. It represents a manageable component of work. However, for scheduling purposes, the work package must be translated into specific activities. For example, the work package event venue arrangement becomes the activity confirm venue. The work package publicity materials can become two activities design poster and print poster. The work package speaker arrangement become invite speaker. The work package event operation becomes set up event hall. This is important because we cannot schedule a general work package without knowing the specific task. A clear activity allows us to estimate durations, assign responsibility, and monitor progress. Now we move to part 1, which is schedule computation. Schedule computation is where we calculate the timing of project activities. In this part, we will learn how to calculate important scheduling values such as earliest start, earliest finish, latest start, latest finish, float, and critical path. At first, this term may look technical, but actually the idea is simple. We are trying to answer questions such as when can this task start? When can it finish? How late can this task start without delaying the whole project? Which task cannot be delayed? This calculation helps the project manager make better decisions and control the project schedule more effectively. Schedule computations are calculations used to determine the timing of project activities. They help us find the earliest time an activity can start and finish. They also help us find the latest time an activity can start and finish without delay the project. Besides that, schedule computation help us identify the amount of delay allowed for certain activity. This delay allowance is called float or slack. Most importantly, this computation help us identify the critical path of the project. The critical path shows the activities that must be completed on time because any delay will delay the whole project. In simple terms, schedule computations help the project manager know whether the project can finish on time. Before we do the calculations, we need to understand the important terms. First, ES means earliest start. This is the earliest time an activity can begin. Second, EF means earliest finish. This is the earliest time an activity can be completed. Third, LS means latest start. This is the latest time an activity can begin without delay the project. Fourth, LF means latest finish. This is the latest time an activity can finish without delay the project. Next, duration refers to the time needed to complete an activity. Then we have float or slack, which means the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delay the whole project. Finally, the critical path is the longest path in the network with zero float. These terms will be used throughout the calculation, so it is important to understand them clearly. This slide explains how to calculate early finish or EF. Early finish tells us the earliest day an activity can be completed. To calculate EF, we use this formula. EF equal ES plus duration. For example, if activity A starts on day 0 and takes 4 days, the calculation is ES is 0, duration is 4 days. So EF equal 0 plus 4, which is 4. This means activity A can finish on day 4. The important idea here is that early finish depends on when the activity starts and how long the activity takes. If the activity starts later, the finish date will also be later. This slide explains latest finish and latest start. Latest finish or LF is the latest time an activity can finish without delay the whole project. Latest start or LS is the latest time an activity can start without delay the whole project. To calculate latest start, we use the formula LS equal LF minus durations. For example, if activity B must finish by day 10 and it takes 3 days, then LF is 10, duration is 3. So LS equals 10 minus 3, which is 7. This means activity B must start no later than day 7. If activity B start after day 7, it may delay the project. This calculation is useful because it tells the project manager the latest safe time to begin an activity. Float, also called slack, is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the whole project. There are two common ways to calculate float. Float equal LS minus ES, or float equal LF minus EF. If the float is zero, the activity is critical. This means it cannot be delayed. Any delay will affect the project completion date. If the float is more than zero, the activity is non-critical. This means the activity has some flexibility. It can be delayed within the float amount without delay the whole project. For example, if an activity has 2 days of float, the project manager may delay it by 1 or 2 days if needed. This can help when resources are limited or when another activity needs more attention. What is critical path? The critical path is the longest sequence of dependent activities in the project network. It determines the shortest possible durations of the project. Even though we call it the longest path, it actually tells us the minimum time we needed to complete the project. Activities on the critical path have zero float. This means they have no extra time. If any activity on the critical path is delayed, the whole project will be delayed. For example, if the critical activity final event setup is delayed by 1 day, the event may also be delayed by 1 day. That is why critical path activities must be monitored closely. In this example, there are three possible paths. Path 1 is A to B to D with the total durations of 10 days. Path 2 is A to C to D with the total durations of 14 days. Path 3 is A to E to D with a total durations of 12 days. The critical path is path 2, A to C to D. Why? Because it has the longest duration, which is 14 days. This means the project cannot be completed in less than 14 days unless the project manager reduces the durations of activities on the critical path. Now we move to part 2, which is basic scheduling computations. In this section, we will apply the concept we just learned. We will use an example project and calculate ES, EF, LS, LF, float, and critical path. This part is very important because schedule computation is not only theory, it is practical method used by project managers to understand the project timeline. When we know how to compute the schedule, we can identify which tasks are flexible and which tasks must be completed on time. For this example, we will use a project called University Innovation Showcase Event. The project has 7 activities. Activity A is to confirm the venue and takes 2 days. Activity B is to design the event poster and depends on activity A. It takes 3 days. Activity C is to invite guest speakers and also depends on activity A. It takes 4 days. Activity D is to print poster and depends on activity B. It takes 2 days. Activity E is to prepare the event program and depends on activity C. It takes 3 days. Activity F is to arrange catering and also depends on activity C. It takes 2 days. Finally, activity G is the final event setup. It depends on activity D, E, and F. It takes 2 days. This table gives us the basic information needed to draw the network diagram and perform schedule computation. This slide shows the network diagram for the University Innovation Showcase event. The project starts with activity A. After activity A is completed, activity B and C can begin. This means B and C depends on A. Activity D depends on B, so D can only start after B is completed. Activity E and F depends on C, so they can only start after C is completed. Finally, activity G can only start after D, E, and F are all completed. This diagram helps us see the logical flow of the project. It shows which activities come first, which activities can run at the same time, and which activities must wait. Forward pass is used to calculate the earliest start and earliest finish of each activity. The rule is simple. We start from the beginning of the network and move forward. The formula is EF equal ES plus duration. For the first activity, the earliest start is usually 0. Then we calculate the earliest finish by adding the durations. For activities with more than one predecessor, we must use the largest EF from the predecessor activities. This is because the activity cannot start until all previous activities are completed. Forward paths help us determine the earliest possible project completions. Now, let us look at the forward pass calculation. Activity A starts at day 0 and takes 2 days, so it finishes at day 2. Activity B depends on A, so it starts at day 2 and takes 3 days. It finishes at day 5. Activity C also depends on A, so it starts at day 2 and takes 4 days. It finishes at day 6. Activity D depends on B, so it starts at day 5 and finish at day 7. Activity E depends on C, so it starts at day 6 and finish at day 9. Activity F also depends on C, so it starts at day 6 and finish at day 8. Finally, activity G depends on D, E, and F. It can only start after all three are completed. Since the latest finish among DEF is day 9, activity G start at day 9 and finish at day 11. Therefore, the earliest project completion time is 11 days. This slide explains why activity G starts at day 9. Activity G has three predecessors, D, E, and F. Activity D finish at day 7. Activity E finish at day 9. Activity F finish at day 8. Since activity G depends on all three activities, it cannot start after D only. It also cannot start after F only. It must wait until D, E, F are all completed. The latest finish among the three predecessors is day 9. Therefore, the earliest start for activity G is day 9. This is important rule in a forward pass. When an activity has more than one predecessor, we use the largest EF. Backward pass is used to calculate the latest finish and latest start of each activity. The rule is that we start from the end of the network and move backward. The formula is LS equal LF minus duration. For the final activity, the latest finish is usually the same as the earliest project completion time. In this example, the project completion time is day 11. So activity G has LF of 11. For activities with more than one successor, we use the smallest LS from the successor activities. This is because the activity must finish early enough to allow the next activity to start on time. Backward pass help us understand how late each activity can start or finish without delay the project. Now let us look at the backward pass calculation. Activity G is the final activity and its LF is 11 and its duration is 2 days. So LS is 11 minus 2, which is 9. Activity D, E, and F all lead to G. Since G start at day 9, the LF for D, E, and F is day 9. Activity D takes 2 days, so LS is 9 minus 2, which is 7. Activity E takes 3 days, so LS is 9 minus 3, which is 6. Activity F takes 2 days, so LS is 9 minus 2, which is 7. Activity B leads to D. Since D start at day 7, the LF for B is 7. B takes 3 days, so LS is 4. Activity C leads to E and F. E start at day 6 and F start at day 7. Since we use the smallest LS, the LF for C is day 6. C takes 4 days, so LS is 2. Activity A leads to B and C. B start at day 4 and C start at day 2. We use the smallest LS, which is day 2. A takes 2 days, so LS is 0. This slide combines the forward pass and backward pass calculations. For each activity, we can now see the durations, earliest start, earliest finish, latest start, latest finish, and float. Float is calculated by using float equal LS minus ES or float equal LF minus EF. For activity A, the float is 0. For activity B, the float is 2. For activity C, the float is 0. For activity D, the float is 2. For activity E, the float is 0. For activity F, the float is 1. For activity G, the float is 0. This table helps the project manager identify which activities are critical and which activities have flexibility. Based on the computations table, the activity with zero float are A, C, E, and G. Therefore, the critical path is A to C to E to G. The total project duration is 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2, which equal 11 days. This means the shortest possible time to complete the project is 11 days. If activity A, C, E, or G is delayed, the whole project will be delayed. That is why these activities need close attention from the project manager. This slide helps us interpret the float values. Activity A has 0 float, so it cannot be delayed. Activity B has 2 days of float, so it can be delayed up to 2 days without delaying the whole project. Activity C has 0 float, so it cannot be delayed. Activity D has 2 days of float, so it has some flexibility. Activity E has 0 float and must be completed on time. Activity F has 1 day of float, so it can only be delayed by 1 day. Activity G has 0 float and cannot be delayed. The key message here is that activities with float give the project manager some flexibility. When there is a resource conflict or delay, the project manager can adjust non-critical activities first before touching critical activities. There are several common mistakes students usually make when doing schedule computations. The first mistake is using the wrong predecessor. If the predecessor is wrong, the whole calculations will also be wrong. The second mistake is forgetting to use the largest EF during forward pass. Remember, when an activity has more than one predecessor, we use the largest EF. The third mistake is forgetting to use the smallest LS during backward pass. When an activity has more than one successor, we use the smallest LS. Another mistake is confusing ES with LS. ES is the earliest start while LS is the latest start. Some students can assume that all activities are critical. This is not correct. Only activity with 0 float are critical. Finally, some students forget to calculate float. Without float, we cannot identify the critical path accurately. Now we move to part 3, which is using the network to manage the project. After we calculate the schedule, the network diagram should not be kept aside. It must be used as a management tool. A network diagram helps the project manager to understand the logic of the project, identify critical activities, monitor delays, and decide where corrective action is needed. In these sections, we will learn how the project manager can use the network during project executions, not only during planning. A network diagram helps the project manager see how activities are connected. It shows which activities must be completed first, which activities can happen at the same time, and which activities must wait. The network diagram also helps identify critical paths. This is important because the project manager needs to know which activities directly affect the project completion date. Besides that the network diagram helps the project manager understand the effect of delays. If a delay activity is on the critical path, the project manager must respond very quickly. The network diagram can also help decide where to add resources. For example, if critical activity is delayed, the project manager may assign more people to do that activity. In short, the network diagram helps the project manager see the logics of the project clearly. Not all project activities require the same level of attention. Critical activities need close monitoring because any delay will delay the whole project. These activities have zero float, so there's no extra time available. Non-critical activities have float. This means they offer some flexibility. The project manager may delay or adjust this activity within the available float without affecting the project completion dates. For example, if activity B has 2 days float, the project manager can delay it by 1 day if needed. But if activity C has zero float, it must be completed on time. This helps the project manager prioritize attentions and also resources. When a delay happens, the project manager should not panic immediately. The first question should be, is the delay activity on the critical path? If the delay activity is on the critical path, the delay will affect the whole project. For example, if activity C is delayed by 2 days and activity C is on the critical path, then the whole project may also be delayed by 2 days. In this situation, the project manager may need to take corrective actions. Possible actions include adding more team members, reducing the durations of the next activities, doing some tasks in parallel, or revising the schedule. The network diagram helps the project manager understand the impact of the delay and choose the best actions. Now let us look at different situations. If activity B is delayed by 1 day, but activity B has 2 days of float, the project is not delayed yet. Why? Because the activity still has enough flexibility. The delay is still within the float. In this case, the project manager should monitor the activity but may not need to take a major corrective action immediately. This is why float is useful. It gives the project manager breathing space. However, the project manager must still be careful. If the delay becomes more than the available float, then it may start affecting the project completion date. The network diagram can be used as a project control tool during executions. It helps the project manager answer important questions such as, are we still on schedule? Which task is causing the delay? Is the delay task on the critical path? Can we use float to absorb the delay? It also helps the project manager decide whether additional resources are needed or whether the schedule must be revised. For example, if a non-critical activity is delayed but still has float, the project manager may allow it. But if a critical activity is delayed, immediate action is needed. So the network diagram is not only for planning. It is also useful for monitoring, controlling, and decision making. Sometimes the project manager needs to shorten the project durations. This may happen when the project is behind schedule or when the client requests earlier completions. There are two common methods of schedule compressions: crashing and fast tracking. Crashing means adding more resources to complete critical activities faster. For example, the project manager may add more workers to complete venue setup earlier. However, crashing usually increases costs. Fast tracking means doing activity in parallel that were originally planned in sequence. For example, the team may prepare the event program while speaker confirmation is still being finalized. This can save time, but it increases the risk of rework. Both methods can reduce project durations, but they must be used carefully. This slide compares crashing and fast tracking. Crashing uses extra resources to save time. For example, if poster printing must be completed faster, the team may pay for express printing. This is crashing because extra cost is used to reduce time. Fast tracking is different. It does not necessarily add more resources, but it changes the activity sequence by allowing some tasks to happen at the same time. For example, the team may start preparing the event program before all speaker details are fully confirmed. The risk of a crashing is a higher cost. The risk of fast tracking is rework. For example, if the speaker changes, the event program may need to be revised. So the project manager must decide which method is most suitable based on the project situations. Schedule monitoring means checking whether the project is progressing according to the planned schedule. The project manager compares planned progress with actual progress. For example, the schedule may state that the poster should be completed by day 5, but in reality, the poster is only completed by day 7. This means there is a 2-day delay. After identifying the delay, the project manager must check whether the delay activity is on the critical path. If it is critical, action must be taken quickly. If it is non-critical and still has flowed, the project may still be safe. Schedule monitoring helps prevent small delay from becoming major project problem. A project schedule should not remain unchanged from the beginning until the end of the project. The schedule should be updated when a task is delayed, when a task finishes earlier, when a resources become unavailable, when a new risk occurs, when a change request is approved, or when the project scope changes. For example, if a key team members become unavailable, the project manager must update the schedule and possibly reassign tasks. The important message here is that a schedule is not a fixed document. It must reflect the real project situations. If the schedule is not updated, it becomes outdated and no longer useful for managing the project. Now we move to part 4, which is assigning resources to tasks. A project schedule is not complete until resources are assigned. This is because every activity requires resources to be completed. Resources can include people, equipment, materials, budget, and time. In this part, we will learn how to assign resources in realistic and how to avoid resource problems such as over allocations. This is very important because a schedule may look correct in terms of time and sequence, but it will not work if the required resources are not available. Project resources are anything needed to complete project activities. The most common resource is human resource, such as project managers, team members, designers, and technicians, and also administrative staff. Another type of resource is equipment. For example, computers, machines, printers, or laboratory equipment. Materials are also resources. In an event project, materials may include banners, stationery, registration form, or decorations. Financial resources are also important because the project needs money to pay for materials, services, and other expenses. Finally, time is also a resource. Even if people and materials are available, the project cannot be completed if there is not enough time. Resource assignment is important because a schedule is not workable if resources are not available. For example, imagine the schedule says that designing the poster, preparing the report, and managing registrations must all be done on Monday, but all three tasks are assigned to the same persons. This is a problem because one person cannot do all tasks at the same time. As a result, one or more tasks may be delayed. The persons may also become stressed or produce low quality work. This shows that resource assignment must be realistic. The project manager must consider who is available, what skills they have, and how much workload they already have. This slide shows an example of a resource assignment table. The table lists the activity, required resource, assigned persons, and durations. For example, confirming the venue may require administrative support and can be assigned to team member 1. Designing the poster requires design skills and software, so it can be assigned to team member 2. Inviting speakers requires communication skill, so it can be assigned to team members 3. Preparing the program may be assigned to team member 4, while arranging catering may be assigned to team member 5. The final setup may involve all members because it usually requires teamwork. This table helps the project manager clearly identify who is responsible for each activity. It also reduces confusions and overlapping work. A resource-loaded schedule shows not only what activities must be done and when they will happen, but also who is assigned to each activity. It gives a clearer picture of project executions. For example, the schedule may show that day 1 to day 2 is for confirming the venue, and the responsible person is member 1. Day 3 to day 5 is for designing the poster, and the responsible person is member 2. Day 3 to day 6 is for inviting speakers, and the responsible person is member 3. This type of schedule helps the project manager check whether any person is overloaded or whether any task has no assigned owner. A resource-loaded schedule is more practical than a normal timeline because it connects time planning with resource planning. Resource over allocations happens when one resource is assigned to too many tasks at the same time. For example, member 2 may be assigned to design the poster and prepare the program during the same time period. If both tasks require full attention, this is not realistic. The result is that the persons may become overloaded. One task may be delayed or both tasks may be completed with poor quality. Resource over allocation is one of the reasons why schedules fail during executions. Therefore, project managers must check the workload of each team member before approving the schedule. Project managers can solve resource conflicts in several ways. First, they can move one task to another date. This is suitable if the task has float. Second, they can assign the task to another person who has the required skills and availability. Third, they can add more resources such as additional staff or equipment. Fourth, they may reduce the task scope if the project allows it. Fifth, they can use float or for non-critical activities. This means delay non-critical activities without affecting the final project completion date. Finally, if necessary, the project manager may extend the schedule. However, this should be done carefully because it may affect stakeholder and project deadline. The key point is that resource conflict must be solved before project executions begin. Resource leveling is a technique used to adjust the schedule based on resource availability. If a person or equipment is not available, the project manager changes the schedule. For example, if a designer is not available on Monday, the design activity may be moved to Wednesday. Resource leveling helps create a more realistic schedule because it respects actual resource constraints. However, one possible result is that the project durations may become longer. This is because some tasks may need to be delayed until the required resources are available. So resource leveling is useful when resource availability is more important than maintaining the original schedule. Resource smoothing adjusts activities within their available float without changing the project completion date. In resource smoothing, the project manager moves non-critical tasks, but the final project deadline remains the same. For example, activity B has 2 days float. The project manager delays activity B by 1 day to reduce workload. Since the delay is still within the float, the project still finished on time. Resource smoothing is useful when the project manager wants to balance workload without affecting the project end date. The difference between smoothing and leveling is that smoothing does not delay the whole project, while leveling may extend the project durations. This slide compares resource leveling and resource smoothing. Resource leveling is used to solve resource conflict. It may extend the project durations because activities are adjusted based on actual resource availability. Resource smoothing is used to improve resource usage while keeping the project completion date unchanged. It only adjusts activities within available float. For example, if a critical activity needs a specific engineer who is not available, resource leveling may delay the activity and extend the project. But if a non-critical activity has float, resource smoothing can move the activity slightly without delay the project. So project managers must understand the difference and choose the suitable technique based on the situations. This slide shows an example of resource conflict. Suppose member 3 is assigned to invite guest speaker from day 3 to day 6. At the same time, member 3 is also assigned to arrange catering from day 5 to day 6. This creates a conflict because member 3 is expected to handle two tasks at the same time. To solve this problem, the project manager can assign the catering task to another team member, such as member 5. Another option is to move the catering task to day 7 to day 8, if the schedule allows it. The main lesson is that the resource conflict must be identified early. If not, they can cause delays and reduce work quality. Resources should not be assigned randomly. They should be assigned based on skills, experience, availability, workload, task difficulty, and responsibility level. For example, a student who is good at design should handle poster design. A student who communicates well should handle speaker invitations. This approach improves work quality because the right person is assigned to the right task. It also helps reduce delays because skilled team members usually complete tasks more efficiently. However, project managers must also consider workload. Even if a person is skilled, they should not be overloaded with too many tasks. Good resource assignment require balance between capability and availability. This slide shows a simple responsibility matrix. The purpose of this table is to show who is responsible for each activity. For example, member 1 may be responsible for confirming the venue. Member 2 may be responsible for designing the poster. Member 3 may be responsible for inviting speakers. Member 4 may be responsible for preparing the program. Member 5 may be responsible for arranging catering. For final setup, all members may be responsible because it requires teamwork. The letter R means responsible. This table is useful because it helps everyone understand their task clearly. It reduces confusions, avoid duplications of work, and improve accountability. A workable project schedule has several important characteristics. First, it must be realistic. This means the schedule is based on actual time, actual resources, and actual project constraints. Second, It must be easy to understand. If the schedule is too complicated, the project team may not use it properly. Third, it must be based on actual resource availability. A task should only be scheduled when the required people, equipment, or materials are available. Fourth, it must be linked to project scope. The schedule should only include activities that are part of the approved project scope. Fifth, it must be flexible when changes happen. In a real project, changes and delays are normal. Six, it must support monitoring and control. The project manager should be able to use the schedule to track progress and make decisions. Finally, the schedule must be accepted by the project team. If the team does not understand or support the schedule, it will be difficult to implement. To summarize this chapter, producing a workable schedule is more than just arranging dates on a timeline. A project manager must define activities clearly, sequence activities correctly, estimate realistic durations, perform schedule computations, identify the critical path, calculate float, use the network diagram to manage delays, assign resources realistically, and monitor the schedules regularly. The main message is that a schedule must connect planning with the real project executions. Before we end this chapter, please remember that a good project schedule is not only about putting activities into a timeline. A schedule must be realistic, practical, and suitable with the resources available. As a project manager, your responsibility is not only to create the schedule, but also to monitor it, update it, and make decisions when changes or delays happen. This is what makes the schedule workable in real project situations.